And welcome on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's myself, Mitch Spinell, himself, Mitchell Balla, back at it for another edition of some sports talk. Mitchell, of course, it's always good to see you. Talk a little bit about the recent sports landscape, and it's been kind of an eventful last few days, and I'm excited to talk about some of these topics that we're going to get to today.
Likewise with you, Mitch. It's a pleasure to be back here. Only a few days off between recording, but there's still something going on in the sports world, whichever, league or association we want to talk about. There's plenty to talk about, and I'm excited to get down and get into it with you here tonight.
Indeed. So we have the a list of topics we're going to get to, and as always, you guys can follow us on our podcast on a lot of the major platforms, including Spotify and Anchor. That's how we publish the episodes, so we can get it out to all the major services. I think Apple Podcasts is in the works if it's not up already. So be sure to follow us there. Obviously on YouTube, if you're watching this, you can also watch it on Spotify, but you can mainly watch it on our YouTube channel, the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. And of course, you can go to our website, bigtimesportsohio.com. And that's where you can find all of our stuff there, including this show. So want to get off to a Brown-centric topic today, because obviously another day of training camp in the books, another week of camp in the books, as the team is getting prepared for its preseason opener in Jacksonville next Friday. So the news, I believe, broke late Saturday, in which Kareem Hunt has really been kind of not been participating in team drills during training camp. He's been in individual and positional drills, but he has been sitting them out on Friday and Saturday in order to, I believe, kind of negotiate a new deal for himself, basically either to get a trade or a potential new deal from the Browns, which is very interesting because these talks have they've kind of been up and about the last few months, especially, and it seemed like it was kind of inevitable that the team would be able to negotiate something eventually with a guy who's a starter on practically any other team that you would put yourself out there, because he's so talented in that way. But now it feels a little bit different because with all that's going on in the Browns organization right now, and all the kind of noise that they have to deal with from outside, and maybe probably even inside the club facilities, I'm wondering, Mitchell, where do you see the Browns taking these negotiations with Hunt? Do you think they'll be quick and swift, or could this kind of drag out into the season and result in a potential deal that would involve the Browns losing one of their key backs?
I think that it can go one of two ways. How much does Kareem Hunt really want to be here, right? Now, listen, running back is probably the most demanding position in terms of length of career in the NFL, right? You're constantly getting hit, whether it's you blocking or running the football. And Kareem Hunt, we saw last year, missed a number of games with injuries to his calf and his ankle. And so I understand why he wants to get paid, right? You not only does he want to get paid, but you see everybody else in your position group in the past few years getting paid. And at the same time, though, he would pretty much be a starting running back for about 25 other teams in the NFL, I think it's safe to say. But he's not a starter here, and we know that. He's a Cleveland guy. He grew up and went to Willoughby South High School, ended up going to Toledo for college. He's an Ohio man, born, and he loves it here. What would a hometown discount look like? What would that look like if he really wants to stay here that much, but still be paid for enough insurance purposes if he does have an injury? And if the Browns aren't willing to do that, how much is he actually asking for? Because at the same time, not only did you just give your quarterback $230 million guaranteed, Nick Chubb has been signed and extended. Myles Garrett's been signed and extended. Denzel Ward, your two offensive all-pro guards, and Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller. You have a lot of
Njoku even.
Njoku just this offseason. And let's keep in mind, you have Greedy Williams, who way too early to tell, but I don't think he'll be back, who's a free agent at the end of this year. If Greg Newsome is what you think he's going to be, that's somebody you're going to have to pay down the road. I mean, we are finally at a spot where this roster is so talented that you're going to have to make tough decisions like this. But Mitch, it all goes back to what this regime has done so far. And that was in the 2021 NFL draft, they drafted Demetric Felton. Whether you want to think he's a wide receiver or whether you want to think he's a running back, that's up to you, because to me, I don't know what he is yet, because I thought he was very underwhelming as a rookie. They also just drafted a running back out of Cincinnati who has literally been compared to the same type of running back as Kareem Hunt in James Ford. So that to me tells me right there, the Browns were already preparing for life without Kareem Hunt. And as much as this hurts to say, I don't think Kareem Hunt will be a Cleveland Brown much longer.
You don't think he's going to stay around for very long, is what you're saying? Like maybe this year and that's it?
I won't be shocked if he's going to hold out until he gets a new contract. Then I think Kareem Hunt will be off this team before September 11th when we kick off the season in Carolina.
Oh, okay. So this is interesting now because I don't know if this would lead to game boycotts potentially for Hunt, who by the way is in the final year of his current contract, $6.25 million for a guy who has put up very solid numbers, especially for a backup who, and again, this is not a backup talent. This is a guy who could easily have been a Pro Bowler had he remained the start of his career in Kansas City, and a series of events led to his return to where he grew up. And I'm looking at the numbers here. I mean, he only played 8 games last year. Had to deal with a rash of injuries. He's appeared in 32 with 9 starts over 3 years. Total just over 2,000 yards from scrimmage and 19 touchdowns. So but if you watch the games week in and week out for the Browns, you know that he is important in a system that
no doubt
allows Nick Chubb to get some rest time for a position where the longevity of a career is not very sustainable anymore, especially with what he may be used to. And now I'm looking at this situation where you're going to have your quarterback at least out 6 games, at least at this point, because we don't know where the NFL's appeal is going to go. You're already dealing with a rash of injuries, especially at wide receiver right now, even though thankfully you got guys like David Bell back today in camp and looking like they're getting ready to prepare for the season. And now you may be losing one of your key running backs. And again, he's probably RB2 on the depth chart right now, but this seems like a significant part of a Browns offense that we don't really know what they're going to be, especially early in the year, because the pieces either have never played a lot together or they're not as good as some other key components as they would be had everything gone perfect this offseason for Cleveland.
You're 100% correct. Look, you and I talking about this right now, this is us giving us our opinions of what we think is going to happen as we sit here on a Saturday night, a night we typically don't record. But you look at the type of back he is, and you remember last year, granted, yes, Baker Mayfield had a pretty much broken left entire upper body, whatever it was with his shoulder. How many times, though, did we say, and we saw last year when Nick Chubb missed a couple games, Mr. Reliable who never goes out, but Kareem Hunt is a much better receiving running back than Nick Chubb. I really don't think that's up for debate. I think Kareem Hunt can catch the ball to the backfield. You can also line him up, put him in motion out of the backfield, put him out wide as a wide receiver. He allows you to do so much more with the offense, right? And with an offensive analytical guy like Kevin Stefanski, he causes nightmares pretty much for opposing teams, right? You see it with the Baltimore Ravens, who like to play with their tight ends and a quarterback as mobile as Lamar Jackson. You've seen it with even Alvin Kamara down in New Orleans when Drew Brees was still playing. But he also gives Nick Chubb a break. Nick Chubb has not taken as many hits as these other running backs across the NFL the past few years because you have another starting running back in the backfield. And if people forget how good he is because he was dinged up last year and he only played 8 games in 2019, this is a running back that I believe won the NFL rushing title his rookie year with Kansas City, rushing for 1,327 yards. He doesn't turn the ball over. He only lost 1 fumble as a running back in his first 5 years in the NFL. He's not lost 1 fumble as a receiver. He has fumbled 1 time, but regained that himself. So he doesn't put the ball on the field either. But at the end of the day, and you see it year in and year out, and you've seen it before with the Cleveland Browns because we were so used to every single year, new coach, new GM, new quarterback, new coach, new GM, new quarterback. Regimes want to play the guys they draft. And to me, I thought the writing was on the wall that Kareem Hunt's last season would be with the Cleveland Browns in 2022. Once we drafted Ford from Cincinnati, my gut right now is telling me he's going to be gone. If he does, it's a hold-in, by the way, for folks that don't know that. And I feel like hold-in is the first time I'm hearing it this offseason because how many players are actually doing it across the NFL. But I think the reason I'm saying I think they will trade him before September 11th has to do with another corresponding move that I think will be made, but I know we're going to touch on later in this show.
For sure, and we'll definitely get more into the Browns again. They had their what is it, ninth day of training camp at
Yep.
this point down in or up in Berea, I guess. I've been in the city for the last couple of days and seeing the response in downtown as well as in Berea, obviously where the team headquarters are. It's a very interesting dynamic, and I'm sure we'll get into more on that. We'll also get into probably more regarding the Guardians, who have been kind of struggling as of late, post All-Star break and post trade deadline. We kind of touched on that earlier in our series run in our last episode, which again you can go listen to on Spotify at the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's basically a black background with the Big Time Sports logo. It's got a the on the top and a show on the bottom. Basically, that's how you figure us out. So we'll talk more on that. But first,
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week, visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
and back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, talking about the Cleveland Browns and many other topics here on this episode. Mitchell Spinell, Mitchell Balla, and we're here to really get into more of what the Browns were going through this past week in training camp. Obviously, you have the situation with Deshaun Watson suspension appeal from the NFL. You now have the deal with Kareem Hunt sort of sitting out particular points of practice in order to get the Browns' attention that, hey, he either wants a new deal or he wants to be traded from the team. And I want to go into a short topic right before we get to the one that you might have mentioned before the show or during this earlier portion of the show, Mitch. The ongoing situation with Watson, and obviously we mentioned in our last episode he's going to be going under his 6-game suspension is now going to go under appeal by the NFL's appointed new overseer, and that is Peter C. Harvey, who is the former New Jersey Attorney General, has worked with the NFL before in cases very similar to this with Watson. The Ezekiel Elliott situation a few years ago comes to mind, and that leads me into our next topic, where I'm with no certainty as to what's going to happen to Watson. Could be 8-game suspension coming up, could be 12 games, could be the 6 games as it was before, could be a whole year as the NFL has reportedly been trying to push on Watson. So now we're going into a situation where the Browns might have more games without their starter. So now you have a situation where for the majority of the season, if you don't make any outside moves, Jacoby Brissett is your guy. We talked about in the last episode. Jacoby Brissett, I think, is a capable quarterback. I don't think he's your guy to go all 16 games or 17 games unless it's an absolute emergency. See the Indianapolis Colts from just a few seasons ago post the retirement of Andrew Luck. when you look at where the Browns are right now, there were some rumblings throughout the day, outside of camp, obviously, some just rumblings in the sports media scene that the team might be wanting to try and go after another quarterback who has kind of been at odds with his franchise over the last offseason, and that is the guy in San Francisco, 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo is one of the most fascinating cases in the NFL to me because this is a guy that sort of grew without growing in the NFL, succeeded without growing in the NFL. He obviously was drafted as a backup to Tom Brady during their time in New England together, won a pair of Super Bowl championships as the backup, and then was able to sort of work his way over to San Francisco via a trade and then get a massive contract that gave him a lot of money before he even became the regular starter for them. And then one of the best San Francisco defenses ever, as well as Garoppolo, sort of took the team to the Super Bowl a few years ago. And for a good portion of that game, if you remember, Mitch, Jimmy Garoppolo for maybe 3.5 quarters during, I think it was Super Bowl 53, I think, was the better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs. At least he was putting up more consistent numbers. He looked like he was cool and collected. And then the fourth quarter, everything changed when Kansas City came back for that victory. But that was sort of why I found Garoppolo fascinating, because he was never seen as like the apex option for the 49ers during that run, but he was obviously had to do something. Then the next 2 seasons kind of happened. The guy deals with injuries, and he's still cannot consider the number one for the team. And San Francisco trades a bunch of draft picks to go get Trey Lance. Then he gets, then you get the comments from the 49ers brass this offseason. It's Trey's team now. It's Trey's team. We're all in on Trey, basically. Garoppolo is kind of a player without a team now at this point. He has a team, but I'm wondering, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you believe that now would be the move for the Browns to try and take a risk, like they have a lot this offseason, try to take a risk and wager a deal for Garoppolo because of the uncertainty of what's going on? Or do you wait out the decision by Harvey on Watson, and if it's an extensive one, risk the possibility of San Francisco wanting more?
As it stands right now, you wait to see what happens with Watson, because the last thing you want to do if you're going to acquire Jimmy Garoppolo is want to bring on that salary for potentially 4 to 5 quarterbacks. Let's not forget, we have Josh Dobbs, who originally was supposed to be QB3, and then we went ahead and signed Josh Rosen, for going back to our wonderful episode 1 talking about the QB class that Baker and Darnold and everybody was in. So Rosen comes to Cleveland now. You have to wait and see what happens with Watson. If Deshaun Watson is suspended more than half the season, you have to make a move, in my opinion. If he's not, I think Jacoby Brissett is able to get you through. So I'm talking 8 games or less, Jacoby can do it. 12 or more, I think you have to go get Jimmy Garoppolo. But here's the thing, Mitch. I believe we had a quarterback here that did the things we needed him to do when he was healthy and when things were set in the right spot for him. There's no doubt about it. And then we traded him away because he played all last year with a hurt shoulder. Can you confirm that happened?
I believe that is what occurred, yes.
Okay, so here's the funny thing is, we got rid of a quarterback who had shoulder surgery on his non-throwing shoulder, and now we're going to go get one that had surgery on his throwing shoulder. There's parts of me that want Jimmy Garoppolo, right? I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the definition of a system quarterback. He fits in a system. He doesn't ever have to do too much, and as long as he takes care of the ball, his team wins. And to your point, he did outplay Patrick Mahomes in the majority of that Super Bowl, and really, Patrick Mahomes got away with it at the end because they had a guy named Tyreek Hill that the 49ers just decided not to cover, that Mahomes found down the left hashes of the sideline. But here's the thing. You don't know what Jimmy Garoppolo is right now. He has not thrown yet. And if it's anything to what I think of immediately when I think of a quarterback that had shoulder surgery on his throwing shoulder, which looked like Cam Newton, who looked like he was in pain every single time he tried to throw the football the past few seasons, I don't want him. But if it's the Jimmy Garoppolo I've watched when he is healthy the past few years, I want him. And that's the tough part. We don't know. We don't know what's happening with Deshaun Watson in the NFL appeal. We don't know what's happening with the 49ers. And to your point, if the Browns wait until Watson is suspended a lot longer, are the Niners going to ask for more? But this goes back to our last conversation earlier in this podcast. The Browns now have a trade chip. If they're not going to re-sign Kareem Hunt, what do the 49ers love out in San Francisco? They love running backs. They love guys who are dual threat players. You just saw it with Deebo Samuel. You've seen it years past where they use a trio tandem at running back. Kareem Hunt fits exactly what the 49ers want to do. So even if they try to drive that price up, it's easier to flop the salaries now. If you have to attach a 5th-round pick, so be it. But that's just something to keep your eye on, because I think now that the Browns have I don't want to say disgruntled, but, somebody looking out for the best interest in themselves in Kareem Hunt. The Browns have to look out for the best interest of the team. And if it's acquiring a quarterback and you can do it now without having to give up a lot of draft picks and take on the full salary by trading Kareem Hunt, some people may say it's a lose or a loss. Some people may say it's a win-win. There's too many things outside of this right now that we don't know, but I'm just saying it's a possibility.
Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, and that was an interesting point that you made regarding Kareem Hunt. And obviously San Francisco does like their dual threat backs. And what concerns me though is the money, and that's the number one concern for most people, because you have Garoppolo, who is due nearly $27 million this upcoming season, compared to the $6.5 that Kareem Hunt is scheduled to make. Now, obviously, numbers can be rewagered, and I'm not saying that the final numbers are final, but I wonder if San Francisco would be willing to make that trade. And I wonder if San Francisco would be willing to make that trade at this point. I know I keep going back to making a trade immediately, and I'm not saying we need to blow it up immediately. And I do agree with you that if the Browns were to await the decision on Watson, that could allow them to be more confident in a risk like this, even though you'd probably allow San Francisco to be like, hey, you guys are in more dire straits than you were 6 weeks ago. You know what? We kind of want a little more from you guys. We know what you're going through right now. Again, though, I'm the money is what kind of keeps me a little hesitant on giving up such a good talent at running back for $6.5 million, as we mentioned, and then trading for a guy who's making the sort of money you might expect more from the lines of like a Dak Prescott or a Russell Wilson. Maybe not a guy like Garoppolo, who we're not saying is terrible, but again, it's just it's an thing. There's a reason that San Francisco is willing to risk, potentially Trey Lance. Who knows what's going to happen with him.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. They don't know what's going to happen. But here's where the Niners are. You don't hardly ever see teams, and it's usually across most sports, trade within a division. There's only a few spots right now until training camp keeps going, because unfortunately it's something you see year in and year out. A team usually loses a quarterback. Somebody usually goes down in training camp during the preseason games or just during practice. The Seattle Seahawks are desperate for a quarterback. It's Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Jimmy Garoppolo is better with or without a good shoulder throwing a football than both those guys. Do the Niners really want to trade him in division, though? And let's not forget, this is the last year of Jimmy Garoppolo's contract. He needs to prove something if he wants to get paid. And what better situation would it be than here in Cleveland with a team ready to win right now, a plethora of stars on both sides of the football? And if the quarterback's gone for a year, it's your team, and then you're going to leave. It's inevitable, because you're not going to sign Jimmy Garoppolo again with Deshaun Watson under a fully guaranteed contract, which may not start until the start of next season if he is suspended for a full season. It's the perfect match for Jimmy G trying to make it a case for himself to be paid and be worth a $27 million quarterback. And the Niners are going to be desperate too, Mitch. You don't want to cut him. You don't want to take the dead cap hit. And that's where they're almost at. I think they're holding on to Jimmy G, hoping that something happens to somebody else in the league, to where a team becomes desperate and has to acquire him. But at the same time, it doesn't look that way for other teams as it is right now. And the Niners are going to have to take a big cap hit when they decide to cut him.
Really quick, before we go to the next break, do you think that San Francisco could look at the roster that Seattle is currently putting together and see it the way I see it, as it's basically DK Metcalf and the scraps of the Legion of Boom.
Yep.
That's pretty much it at this point. Do you think they could look at that and be like, we could risk getting rid of Jimmy for a decent price, basically?
I definitely think they could, and my whole thing is, if you got him back for a high draft pick, absolutely, because the Niners are going to have to try to look to recruit draft picks after trading all the way up to number 3 for Trey Lance, which time will tell if that was the right move or a foolish move. You don't want to help them out, if that makes sense. I'm not saying Jimmy G is going to make this a playoff contender, but if he wins them a couple games, you get a draft pick, all of a sudden it's hurting the draft pick's value here and there. There's so many pieces and parts to this whole entire thing, and unfortunately, it goes back to what we've talked about all offseason as Browns fans, and every one of these first 3 episodes here on the Big Time Sports Podcast is what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. And at this point, it's getting exhausting, and I know for Browns fans and listeners of the show, it's upsetting because there's nothing new that we can touch on because we don't know what's going to happen, right? You and I are giving our best educated guesses and our opinions as Browns fans, and it's just super frustrating. But I see your point, and I do agree with your point to a T. I'm literally on both sides right here, and that I can fight myself both ways right now, and that's the hard part because we don't know.
Well, I was going to say, I was looking up the numbers here. I was surprised that the Niners trading of 3 draft picks runs out this coming spring. It was 21, 22, and 23, along with a 3rd rounder to Miami. So, I mean, time will tell. Like, once again, time will tell what will happen with Lance and the 49ers, and time will tell what will happen with the Browns this come fall. So when we come back, I want to touch on maybe some other topics outside of the Cleveland Browns, as well as outside the NFL as well. We'll get more into that as soon as we can. But first,
you invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch, Spinell, Mitchell, Balla, here to talk about more in sports. So we were talking about the Browns the first 2 segments. I want to get away from the Browns a little bit because there is obviously stuff going on with the other 31 teams in the league. And obviously they're going to be more centric around the Browns stuff because we want to talk about the things that are relevant to us and maybe some big stuff if it even has nothing to do with Cleveland. But I want to start off we were talking about this earlier today, Mitch, and, you know, you don't like to revel in things that haven't happened yet. You don't like to assume because you're going to make 2 other people look terrible to keep that saying in a PG setting. But I was looking at a certain depth chart today that was, I believe, unofficial by the team. It's not the depth charts for any teams I don't think are official yet until they make their moves. But there was a report today, I believe it was Pro Football Talk who might have been saying this. The unofficial depth chart for the Steelers right now reads Well, let's just say number one is Mitch Trubisky, obviously the offseason pickup, who was the former Pro Bowler, Cleveland native, former Tar Heel. People forget Mitch Trubisky made the Pro Bowl and he was the MVP. We should never forget that.
Never forget.
And number two was longtime-ish Steelers veteran Mason Rudolph, which means that the number 3 quarterback on the depth chart right now, behind Mitch Trubisky, MVP Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph, is Kenny Pickett, who was the Steelers' I guess most noted draft pick from this past spring. On the surface, Mitch, this seemed like the funniest thing in the world as a Browns fan, because for all the problems we had this offseason with involving the quarterback position, this is the first time in many, many, many years for Pittsburgh fans that their quarterback spot is not going to have, obviously, Roethlisberger under center. And you look at that, even with Roethlisberger not being the same quarterback he was probably for the past 3-4 years, the end of his career compared to back then, I have to keep myself under control. And I want to get your thoughts on that, because it surprises me that Rudolph, as of now, would outrank Pickett on the Steelers' unofficial depth chart if that were to be the case.
You mean to tell me the Pittsburgh Steelers have a quarterback competition and quarterback controversy?
I mean, I didn't say it, but they have not been named a starter for week 1, it seems.
But you're not denying it either. You love to see it. You love to see it. You love to see a competent organization, above competent, actually. I have the utmost, I actually hate that I have to say this. You want to talk about what an organization should look like, you have to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, Mike Tomlin, never been under 500 as head coach, which is why I still am scared of this team, but it's about time. It's about time that we can have a conversation like this. And, you know, Mitch Trubisky, I think, got a very raw deal in Chicago, having Matt Nagy as his head coach, was an absolute train wreck as a head coach. And unfortunately, you know, quarterback gets the blame for most of that, which it comes with the job. Mason Rudolph, who Steeler fans, at least Steeler fans I know, absolutely despise, is still there. And now Tiny Hands Kenny Pickett is third on the depth chart. Hey, I'm just saying a fact, Mitch. I saw your reaction there. He has the very small hands. Miles Garrett will prove it when they play, and you know, if he is back there, which it doesn't seem like he will be, Miles Garrett will take the ball out of his hands. It's okay. I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't pick any of them because I'm not scared. For the first time in my life, I'm not scared. All right. I know Mitch Trubisky got a raw deal, and I do think Mitch Trubisky is better than what you've seen in his career. The Steelers lost Juju Smith-Schuster, and personally, you know, just completely off topic, I have friends and family. We've been talking about fantasy football and what guys you'd want to take, and I said, you know what? Call me crazy. Najee Harris, wouldn't take him, because if a team is smart, you're going to stack the box and not let Najee Harris beat you, and let one of these 3 average to below average quarterbacks try to beat you after you lose Juju Smith-Schuster. I love it. I love it. It's for the first time in my lifetime, the Steelers are caught in the middle, I think, because they're not going to be a 4-13 team, right? I think you and I both know that, with Mike Tomlin there, reigning defensive player of the year there. They've always had a great defense, but part of me hopes that Mitch Trubisky is the starter because he's a Cleveland boy. And then maybe, you know, something happens, he can't play against us, and it's Mason Rudolph or Pickett. But at the end of the day, I'm not scared anymore. I can finally say that. And listen, Steeler fans are going to listen to this and maybe tweet at me or text me or tag me in something and say, oh, you don't know who your quarterback is. Guess what? I haven't known who my quarterback is my entire life. So guess what? I don't care.
Yeah, and look, I brought up this topic even with the knowledge that Mike Tomlin typically ranks his depth chart guys based upon years of service to for the start of the season, at least, because It's kind of funny to us because you're right, the lack of stability within the Steelers right now at that specific spot is interesting to me. But they've always kind of had that in places like the running back position, even though they would always seem to fill it with many talented guys. I mean, Najee Harris is another one. You could say he was a very prominent rookie last year at that position. And who knows what's going to happen specifically with running backs, because again, they don't last very long, specifically nowadays. Speaking of quarterback competitions, there was an interesting comment from Carolina Panthers head coach Matt Rule today. I believe it was an interview. I don't know if it was a press conference, but he was talking about, he was asked if there would be a named starter at this point of the year. And he basically said that the position, the starter would not be made until at least when the Panthers get back from their second preseason game, which comes August 19th in New England against the Patriots. We know who the two quarterbacks are down there fighting for the job. 3 if you count incoming rookie Matt Corral. Mitch, is this a case of Rule basically saying Baker's got the job even though he doesn't have the job at this point, or do you think there actually is a legitimate, it's up in the air as to who could be the starter come week 1?
Baker Mayfield's the starting quarterback, and this is his way of saying it without actually saying it, right?
Okay.
You acquired Sam Darnold last year, and that actually they got off to a 4-0 start, and people are like, oh my gosh. Well, then Christian McCaffrey got hurt per usual, and then this is what happens. Sam Darnold openly admitted in New York that he saw ghosts on the field, Mitch. I don't know how you can really ever be set in stone on that being your quarterback ever again. Granted, the Jets also did him wrong. I'm not going to put it all on Sam Darnold. I think right now that everybody has a pretty good idea of what Baker Mayfield is, right? There's the anomaly that you did see him in 2020, the season he had. And then last year for the first game against Kansas City looked great until the game-ending INT. You don't trade for a guy after you literally just traded for another quarterback the year before and don't expect him to start. I think some of Baker's struggles are, let's keep in mind, 5th different playbook he's now had to learn in 5 or 6 years. Coming off shoulder surgery, although non-throwing shoulder surgery. So there's a couple things that, are out of his control a little bit. But to your question, Mitch, this is Matt Rule saying Baker Mayfield's the quarterback without actually coming out and saying Baker Mayfield's the quarterback, because I don't know how you feel. And I think if Browns fans take emotion away from last year, it's a no-brainer who you're starting to quarterback between Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
It would seem so, because even though with all the problems that Baker had last year, he was at least the consistent guy week in and week out. With Carolina, it just kind of seemed like they were just throwing guys out there at the end to test them. And as much as we would probably like to hear that even PJ Walker is getting in some time in this competition, at this point, it seems like a near guarantee that Baker will be the week 1 starter. And that's going to be specific, especially topic inducing, because obviously Baker's going to be facing off seemingly with his former team. Obviously not with the man who replaced him at quarterback. That would mean all of the national media would be centering in on that week 1. But it's just something I wanted to talk about, and that is pretty much all we have for NFL talk here up until the middle of this week, where I'm sure we're going to get more stories here as camp continues along, leading into the Jaguars game coming this Friday, which is the first Browns preseason game, as well as for Jacksonville. And speaking of which, we also had the Hall of Fame game this past weekend. We had the Hall of Fame ceremonies on Saturday, which is very fascinating. I mean, Mitch, you obviously are more of a Canton native than I am. You grew up in that area. I mean, kind of take me through real quick were you able to gather any of the experience, the game, the ceremonies, anything like that?
No, not this season. And to be honest, I think that when you look throughout Canton, Ohio this weekend, there are some people that are disappointed, right? This is generally a weekend that brings in a lot of relief for the city of Canton in terms of publicity, in terms of money and everything that they make. And today, a writer from the Canton Repository, which is the local paper here in Canton, said that this is the smallest attended, enshrinement ceremony that he has ever seen covering it. The parade this morning that they have in downtown Canton was very small, probably the smallest it's been in years. And Mitch, I think it ultimately comes down to one thing. You had some loaded classes in the past couple of years, right? We saw players go into the Hall of Fame that you and I have grown up watching, and some were our favorite players at some point. For me, Peyton Manning's one that comes to mind. You've seen Peyton Manning, Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, Ed Reed, just Brett Favre, just to name a few, right? This class this year, there wasn't many guys that we would have watched growing up. And unfortunately, I think that's why we saw what we saw. Now, granted, I know Tom Benson Stadium was packed Saturday night for the Journey concert, right? Journey, all-time just legendary group, and they're here in Canton singing. And then tomorrow night you have Dave Chappelle at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, which is going to be amazing, I'm sure. But as far as just the overall atmosphere around the city of Canton, it's not what it's been in years past. And it happens, right? Not all the good players retire in the same year. And then, for instance, you look ahead to 2023, the list is already out of Hall of Fame eligible candidates. Mitch, when it comes to the modern day guys, it's a loaded list. And obviously it's up. There's one player on that list. And if you think I'm biased because I'm a Browns fan, you think I'm wrong, you're wrong, because Joe Thomas is a first ballot Hall of Famer and he will get in there.
We are very aware of the incoming class members of 2023, because obviously we mentioned Joe Thomas. You also got the likes of James Harrison going in there. You got Dwight Freeney, Darrell Revis, who we got, Elvis Dumerville. I mean, Chris Johnson, Matt
Reggie
Forte,
Wayne,
Carson Palmer, Shane Leck, and these are just the 2023 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll probably get some guys in there from the other classes that weren't able to get quite in there. But as for this year, I mean, you had the guys like Richard Seymour, for example. Former head coach Dick Vermeil was another one that I was really fascinated by. Tony Baselli, the first Jacksonville Jaguar to ever be represented in the Hall of Fame. Such a young franchise, finally getting one of their players. It was fascinating to me. And obviously, I mean, Cliff Branch, Leroy Butler, Sam Mills, and Bryant Young. And that is interesting that you didn't have as big a star-studded list. But even then, it feels like in some years it's been not as star-heavy as the classes of 2020 and 21 were last year. So we'll get more into some other topics here. I mean, obviously, we'll get to the Guardians, and then we'll see what comes up after this. But first...
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Where you matter. You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitchell Spinell and Mitchell Balla there. We were talking more about the NFL. I want to go over to baseball now because This weekend was interesting for the Cleveland Guardians. I mean, they lost Thursday and Friday to the Houston Astros, who are one of the streaking teams in baseball right now. And then they won Saturday, actually. Cal Quantrill was able to get a decent start in there. And the Guardians are in a particular spot right now. They're one of the teams that are kind of hovering over 500, but in the AL Central, that means they're able to remain in second place just behind Minnesota, just ahead of Chicago right now. So I'm very curious as to where the team is going to go. And then, of course, you get the news that broke earlier today in which the Guardians were actually designating one of their mainstays in the lineup for the last few seasons in Franmil Reyes. He was designated for assignment today, as well as the releasing of first baseman Bobby Bradley, a guy that I was wondering if he would become a mainstay in the Guardians lineup. And, of course, he turned out to not be. So, Mitch, it stinks to see a guy like Franmil seemingly not be with the club for much longer. I mean, obviously, who knows if any team's going to pick him up, but this was a guy that for the last few seasons had been a reliable power spot in your lineup. And then this season in particular, even with the injury, just not very productive in the lineup at all. And it's sad to see somebody go from that level of skill go down that quickly. And I mean, what do you think the case is there?
I think it goes bigger than what the struggles were at the plate this year. There was a common factor when you looked into a lineup probably once every 5 games, right? And I know it drove my dad crazy, and I'm sure it drove a lot of other Guardians fans crazy. It would be when you looked at that lineup and batting 5th or 6th was Franmil Reyes playing right field. Now, some people would say, well, why does he have to play right field, right? Now the National League has a designated hitter. You know, typically we had seen that before in the World Series in 2016. We saw Carlos Santana play the outfield, right? It's typical, but no, now Major League Baseball has adapted the league-wide designated hitter. The Guardians in the offseason had told Franmil Reyes he needed to come back, you know, at this point with his weight, you know, be in this kind of shape. And not only did Franmil Reyes not do that, he actually went the opposite way, got bigger, got slower, did not follow the team guidelines that they were asking him to do. And that's per some sources out there, right? You and I will never know because you and I aren't looking at the physical and doctor's notes and what Franmil Reyes weighs day in and day out. I think it started there, though. I really do. I think when you have something like that and you know you didn't do what you're told and your boss, in this case, the organization is holding it over you, you carry that with you. But at the same time, Mitch, this is a guy that hit 30-plus home runs for us the past 2 seasons. And he looked like he had never played baseball at times this season at the plate, and it didn't look like he could get out of it. And sometimes it's in certain cases when it comes to baseball, right? It can be mechanical, whether it's the way you load, the way you're moving your hands, your eye vision half the time, where your head's at and how you're tracking the baseball. For Franmil Reyes, it looked like he was completely lost, and it was awful to watch. And I don't mean because I'm a Guardians fan, he was an automatic out, because he was such a likable guy, Mitch. He was so much fun. He was a funny guy. He really kind of, you know, fit what we like in players here as Cleveland fans, and he's gone. He's literally going to be gone. And unfortunately, it kind of stings because he was part of that Mike Clevenger trade, or maybe I was a year off. Maybe it was part of the
that was it. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, you're giving up on them already, but at the same time, what is one thing we know with this front office? They tend to give up on players and give up players at the right time. And it's crazy to know that. And yes, I'm frustrated we didn't make a trade at the deadline, but you ultimately have to give this front office the benefit of the doubt because they have earned that year in and year out. And we'll have to wait and see what happens. But at the same time, I think you've seen they're not messing around. If you're not going to put up numbers, they're going to have this youth movement happen, and they're going to call up guys to replace you, just like they did this past week with Franmil.
I believe it was the Hall of Fame owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, who made the popular phrase that it's better to get rid of a player a year too early than a year too late. And I mean, I'm looking at some of the numbers here with Reyes. He's going to make $4.5 million this year. Seemed like he could be a non-tender candidate for the team. And for me, it's weird because like I'm very focused in on Bradley compared to the situation, which stinks because Franmil was more of a presence in the lineup than Bradley ever was. I mean, Bradley was a guy who seemingly could be this sort of lefty power hitter in the Guardians lineup, and the man just had a lot of strikeouts throughout his 97 games. I mean, it's unfortunate, and now that leads to another topic regarding the team, and that with another veteran gone like Franmil, who again is only 27, I believe, we've been seeing even more of a youth movement in Cleveland right now than the Guardians have ever let on, even by their standards. You had guys who have been coming up very recently. Tyler Freeman just got his call up to the big leagues. We saw Gaddis actually make his major league debut, even though they immediately optioned him back down. And it seems like a lot of really young prospects are coming up through the Guardians season so far, in a time where the team is still competitive in the American League playoff race. Is this kind of an indication of, no moves made at the deadline, so they're just kind of scrapping what they can put together, and it's not going to lead to it's going to lead to them like burning out at some point? Is that what you think, or do you have a different perspective?
I tend to agree with you with what you just asked, and maybe it burns them out. But back on episode 2, I also told you, that's always a possible option. Or sometimes the youth movement pays off because you have other teams, and you look at someone like the New York Yankees, right? Star-studded lineup, guys older in age. Sometimes they just run out of gas down the stretch where these guys are so young, they don't even think twice about it, and they're so young they don't care. But it all goes back to a quote I read from Chris Antonetti, where it was almost like, hey, we didn't expect to be here this year, right? We did not expect to be in the position we're in right now. We didn't want to disrupt the lineup, this, that, whatever, for why they didn't make a trade. And me being a baseball guy at heart, that really upsets me, because anytime you have a chance to go for it, I think you should go for it within reason, right? Not selling the entire farm, but I think in the series with Houston, you've kind of seen they're outmatched because they're playing a veteran-laden team that has been there and done that with or without trash cans. That's up for other people's discrepancy. But the Central's so weak that you can't really count this team out yet, because I'm with you. I'm kind of wavering right now. You've seen them get rid of Franmil. Bobby Bradley, obviously, they released him today from AAA. I was never really a huge fan of him, so I'm sorry to put that news on you during the show. But I think this team will get burnt out just because, and the morale's down a little bit because we did not make a move at the trade deadline. I think it can ultimately boost team morale. But at the same time, I don't want to overreact because they struggled with the Astros, even though they just won with Cal Quantrill pitching a very good game. I don't know. I'm going to answer, I don't know.
It's kind of a question that we ask ourselves a lot recently. And I'm 2 games back of the Twins now at this point, 2.5 games back in the wild card standings are the Guardians, and we'll see where they go from here. But we want to get to one last break, and then when we come back, you had a topic that was fascinating to me, and it ties into something that I witnessed over the weekend, and it's fascinating. We'll get to it real quick, but first.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Think Ferris.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world, Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Final segment, Mitchell Spinell and Mitchell Balla here. It's talking about sports. We wanted to change things a little bit in the last segment because while we talk about the usual suspects in sports around here, you got your baseball, your football, and your basketball. We try to cover them. Mitch talked about an event that he watched over the weekend, and it is a common game. I will call it a game that you would probably see played out here in the Midwest quite often, especially around the summer and fall seasons. I want to let Balla get in on this because I want it to tie it into something that I think would be very relevant. So take it away, Balla.
Cornhole. Now, some of you people think I'm crazy. Some of you people might not know what I'm talking about. So for the people that don't call it the correct name and call it bags, that's what we're talking about. Cornhole and bags. I was literally sitting at a Winking Lizard with a couple buddies of mine watching the American Cornhole League Singles Championships. And Mitch, I was literally sitting there, not a whole lot on, right? They're talking training camp about the Chargers, and I don't care. And the channel changes, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be sweet. I was glued to the TV watching these guys play cornhole because you think about it. Listen, I think I'm good. I'm sure if you play, you think you're good. You go to grad parties, you go to cookouts, you go to whatever it may be. I'll play cornhole. I'm really good. We're not good. And if you think you're good, turn on the American League or the American Cornhole League Championship because these dudes were canceling each other out for about 7 straight rounds. And it was 2-0 for the next, I don't know, however many rounds. It was crazy. It was the longest game of cornhole, and it was stuck at like 6-4, and every single throw or toss, this bag was going in, and there was one throw. His name was Jamie. That's who I was pulling for today. Jamie. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. 3 bags surrounding the center, and he throws one and knocks all 3 in. It was just absolutely electric. I don't know why people don't talk about this more. It started to wonder, do I need to change my career path to be able to commentate on this type of sport? Because they had commentators there with ESPN. It was absolutely electric. And I promise you, if you people think you're good at cornhole or you enjoy playing cornhole, you need to take a break and figure out a way to watch this because the singles, the doubles, and then just the automatic qualifier, it looks like they're in a field house with 200 plus boards. It's so cool. It really is.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. Because I think I did see part of what you watched the other day, and that is part of a whole television form of broadcasting that is always very fun to watch every single year that it comes around. Really quick, I got 2 questions. Number 1, this Winking Lizard you went to, was that the one on Fulton?
It was not the one on Fulton, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. So you don't have to disclose where it was because, your private life and all, but I thought that's where it was. They took down, I just found this out, to get off topic real quick. They got rid of the one in downtown Cleveland, I just found out this year.
Yeah, they did.
That was the one in that slit building. That's...
Now, they still have the one all the way down if you're trying to go to Cleveland Browns, or First Energy Stadium, excuse me. They still have the one that is connected to the Galleria at Erie View. So there is still one downtown.
That's right.
But there is not the one that you, and it seems like myself, are accustomed to going to when you're in Cleveland, whether it's for a Cavs or now a Guardians game. And I found out the hard way, Mitch. Went there with a couple buddies saying, hey, let's go to the Lizard before a game. There was no Lizard there anymore.
No, I last time I went there, first time in a long time, was a few months ago. We went in the one in Independence, but that's not the topic we're talking about. Number 2, the Cornhole Championships. You're right. Those guys are automatic when it comes to the way that they just slide it on the board so gracefully as cornhole players in their polo shirts can do, and it just seems automatic every time, where they have to put it in the right spot, they have to put it in the hole, get it on the board, knock guys off. It's unbelievable. And that is, I believe was part of the Ocho form of broadcasting that ESPN typically does year in and year out, which is one of the most unique days that this channel ever does. Now, obviously, for those of you who don't know, Pete, that I believe the Ocho started from the 2004 Sports Classic Dodgeball, and then they spun that off into an idea for ESPN to do it every year. So it allows them to broadcast some of the most unique sporting events that you really don't usually see, because a lot of the bigger sports like football and baseball are covered. But I looked at the list here, and this was all done, I believe, on Friday, and it went for 14 and a half hours. They did the entire day of programming, and seeing some of the things they have here from midnight all the way to I guess 11:30 is fascinating to me. They started off with stuff like corgi races, and it's just basically dogs racing. It seems simple. And then you have evolution of cliff diving, which is pretty self-explanatory. You also have some like original programming story of spike ball, which that one I'm not 100% sure on. I think I'd have to look it up later. But another one that they got to is pickleball, and I don't know if you've ever been on a pickleball court before. Pickleball is like a lazy person's version of tennis, and I am here for every single atom of that sport. It is, it's kind of like you play with a ping pong paddle, for those of you who don't know, and then you have like this like a wiffle ball, and you're on this court that you're basically it's not very wide. It's probably like a fourth the size of a tennis court, maybe an eighth, and it is like the most fun that you could have if you want to play tennis, but you also want to have a few drinks after, and maybe a few drinks before. But then I'm also looking on here. You got the benching competition, where it's like guys lifting 900 pounds. You got air hockey championships. I was about to say, you got something?
I was going to ask you, because you have the list pulled up in front of you. I remember during quarantine back in 2020, when everybody had to be at home, they were airing it almost on ESPN2 daily, and I watched the professional rock skipping competition that took place up at Lake Michigan. And let me tell you, even that was cool. I know there was no live sports, but just stuff like that. I know they do one where it's like the longest beard or mustache competition. I believe it's definitely over in a different country, but I don't know if that was on the list this year.
I didn't see it right there. There was one I remember from a few years. It might have been that 2020 year, where it was like it was an event. I can't remember exactly the name, but it was like they had this setup where it was the wooden outlining of what like houses would be, but it was guys that were setting up electrical outlets, or I can't exactly remember what they were doing, but I was like, this is a competitive thing, and it's so crazy to me, because you also have a lot of the stuff that you would expect: dodgeball, kickball, air hockey, wiffle ball. I was about to say there was one that I saw that I really thought was really fascinating. Slippery stairs was one, and then. All right, so we're gonna get to a controversial topic here, I think, because I don't believe that this is a real. I believe it's a real thing, but I don't believe it's a real competitive thing that should be on ESPN, and that is the air guitar all-star air off. Air guitar should not be a competitive thing. I am so sorry to say that. If you want to be competitive with a guitar, any form of guitar, have an actual guitar in your hand. This is the dumbest thing, because I get it. Like, something like that doesn't have instruments that is musical and you can be a performer for makes sense, like in the form of the lip sync battle competition, because those you're actually performing, you're actually putting on like a dance of sorts, and you look like you're doing something musical. Air guitar doesn't. It's somebody else with a real guitar playing a song, and you're not actually holding the guitar. You're making yourself look like you play, and people have to play this like weird mind game, like the emperor has no clothes. And they have to just basically fake it. And it's so stupid, because I don't know. I get if you have a real guitar. I get it if you were to have a Guitar Hero, one of those games, because like that, I remember seeing people be actually really impressive with that sort of stuff. Go watch the movie Paul Blart Mall Cop to figure it out for yourself. Air guitars do not That's not a competitive thing. It should not be a competitive thing. And if you agree with me, comment below on this episode and tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm wrong if you're an air guitar. And I'm sure you're making a good living and you're winning competitions doing that. I can't process it. Some people can't process, why people watch baseball or people watch golf on TV. That I can do. I can't do air guitar. Balla, tell me what you think of air guitars. You just did it.
When you brought up, something that was going to be controversial that, you didn't consider a sport or anything, that I can honestly say I was not expecting air guitar to come out of there. Some people take it up nowadays and say video games or the one I was going to say that I watched. I'm not saying it's not a sport at all. Please don't cancel me for this. The cup stacking competitions. I don't know. That's been on ESPN The Ocho too, but I'm just, air guitar is not, no, it's just not. How do you even get judged? Is it best form? Who makes the best face when doing it?
I don't know.
Are you watching the fingers with the strings? You have nothing to hold on to. So no, Mitch Spinell, you are 100% correct. That one actually a little bit.
All right.
That one is mind boggling to me. I had no idea that was on there. Wow. And listen, if you're out there in the audience and you're listening to this show, we would love to have you on. If you are a professional air guitar player and you've won any championships and you have certification, by all means, I would love to have you on here and you can just tell Mitch and I why we're wrong. But until that happens, Mitch, I don't know if we are wrong.
No, and I'm looking it up here. Air guitar contests have much in common with the figure skating scoring system, especially using the 6.0 scoring system. I don't know much about figure skating either, so we're gonna have to learn that as well. So let me see here. Basically, each participant has to play air guitar on stage in 2 rounds, each lasting for 1 minute. So you don't even play the whole song, really. I guess it's probably because people couldn't sit there that long watching a person pretend to play a song. Plays a selection of his or her choice. Okay. Typically, the song has been edited. Participant plays a section. This is the second round. This is the first round. The second round is participant plays a section of a song chosen by an organizer or a competitor. That actually seems interesting to me because that could be a little bit more of a challenge than just basically, you choreograph your own thing for 6 months and then you finally get to do a minute-long version of it. Participant plays alone. Backing band's not allowed. It has to play air guitar. There's no dress code, and they're encouraged to use any clothing or props that would add character. And it's to those people who dress up in like the crazy rock garbs and everything. That adds to their performance. Like someone would probably dress up like someone from the band Kiss, and they could do something there and play Detroit Rock City. Okay, this is the scoring method, and I know we're going over this, but I need to get this out of the way. Each judge must give the contestant a score from 4.0 to 6.0 on each of the following merit. Technical merit, how much the performance looks like the real playing, including accurate reproduction of all fretwork, chords, solos, and technical moves. Now, I understand you don't basically want a guy just going like this with his hands the whole time, making it seem like he's holding the world's largest guitar, but it's clearly not being played. And I'm shaking the camera here. Number 2, mimesmanship, mimes and all that. How convincingly the performers can mime their performance and create the illusion of an invisible guitar apart from the technical accuracy of the fretwork. Fine. Stage presence, a charisma of rock star, the ability to rock, lack of stage fright, and power to drive thousands of listeners, involves guitar showmanship and other emotional demonstrations. I hate whoever wrote this one. And finally, airness, the most subjective criterion as presentation in figure skating, how much the performance was an object of art by itself, not only a simulation of playing guitar. What is this right? Like, who wrote this? All right. You know what? We're going to end this here. I'm shooting the shot. We're done. Okay.
We're done. What?
I'm annoyed. Go ahead.
You are annoyed? I've kind of felt left out because I'm like, I have a basketball hoop right here in another corner, but the camera doesn't see it. And I'm not going to steal your new shtick. We're 3 episodes in, so I'm trying to find something for me. So from now on, you do your shot. I want to provide a fun fact for the people. And we're going to see how many fun facts I can get before I run out of fun facts. So today's fun fact, Australia is wider than the moon.
I love fun facts. I'm very fascinated by that one now. I have to go double check it. But in the meantime, Mitchell, Thank you for listening. Obviously, Mitchell Balla on Twitter, as you can find him on Facebook as well as in Instagram. My Twitter is @Mitch Spinell. You can find me on all the platforms there. And once again, thank you all for listening. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and other platforms, YouTube as well. Like and subscribe. You can also check out our website, BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can check out all of our socials under that name. So thank you guys so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.